Welcome today. Today, oh my gosh, I am like living this. So, what's your story? What do you want your story to be? And how much of a gap is it between what your story is and what you want your story to be? So, I really thought about this the way Cliff comes on and says the highest and the best, or let's have a full, flourishing life. And we have to start with where we are. As a result of right here painting these windows, I noticed as I was like pulling it up as my backdrop how appropriate it is. These were all red stained before it. 15 windows in the house that were all red stained. Red stain's very challenging to get rid of. So the red stain that was on my windows is now long since gone, and it took me 10 days to paint all of the windows. And in that process of painting all of the windows and redoing them from this red stain to white, I worked on my story, and I had a lot of different things to unravel. And I'm sure every single one of you have painted out there. I'm sure you painted something, and it's a wonderful way to open to being peaceful and yet thinking at the same time. And it reminded me of Marianne Williamson, who's also running for the presidency. She said this great quote where she says, "Let go of the story so the universe can rewrite a new one for you." So I was thinking about that as I was painting, and after several days of painting, my body stiffened up. I'm not a painter. And so I started to feel stiffnesses through the body. Well, at one point, I had to yell for help from my son. I'm like, "Harrison, I'm stuck." And it was right in front of this window. I got stuck on the chair. My hip seized up with my arm. And I realized there was like this nerve, something shut down. So he came and rescued me, got me down off the chair. And as a result of that from the painting, from going inward, from realizing that my body wasn't used to all these weird angles and it was shutting down on me. So even though I might have been listening to other things going on in my head, I clearly had not heard my body saying, "Hey, this isn't working for me. You're pushing it too hard." And as a result of that, I thought about, what is my story about my body? What do I want my story to be? And how big is that gap in between the story that is actually playing out to the one that I want? And I realized that there were 6 steps that I went through to transform this thing. First, I started with my body. And it reminded me, Ernest Holmes talks about that your thoughts are infinite. So when I thought about that and I thought about my body, I thought, well, I do want to change this story so I'm stronger in my core and that I can do some of these angles, maybe not for so many prolonged periods. And I will listen more to my body as I'm painting. And I did. And I had more self care as I was doing it, realizing I had to paint with both hands. I had to take more breaks to nurture myself. But in that process, I started to observe, and I started to thank my body for speaking to me and letting me know that, hey, guess what? I have needs and you need to listen to me. So I did start to listen to it. And when I was at my Pilates the other day, my instructor said, those last 2 postures you couldn't do a month ago. And so I want to say that as that first step, the one to be honest and witness your story and thank it, also be in that place that I had to come to, that even though you might say, yes, I'm changing it, I'm strong, I'm healthy, I'm this, I'm whole, I'm perfect, that might take more than one day. And that took a whole month for me to get stronger to be able to do those 2 postures. And thank goodness I'm done painting my windows, and I'm done painting my stairs, and I'm done painting my outdoor stain before the winter came, and I'm finished. And I also got stronger in the process. So the step 1 that I realized to change my story was really being honest and seeing where I was now to where I want to go, and that it might not happen that instant I say the prayer. The second thing I realized is that within that story, I let it go to prayer, but there was a bit of a gap there between letting it go to prayer. And what that was for me was that when you hand it over in prayer, I had this funny realization that's like a breakup. It's like you're saying, all right, I'm going to break up with you. I don't want you to be my story anymore. Whether that's I'm employed, I've got this cash flow reserve, I'm an artist, I'm a writer, whatever it is, that you have to break up with that old story. There has to be that release that you do in prayer to surrender it, to totally let it go when you're breaking up with your old story. And that goes on to that. Yes, the second step was breaking up with it, but the third step was that there's an emotionality to it. And I don't like not being able to move around. I don't like that. I had a couple of injuries this summer and I couldn't, run up and down the stairs, and I couldn't get around. I had to hobble a lot, and then I sprained my ankle twice. I was not really, there was emotion that was around that. And as a result of that, I did a lot of movement in the last 6 weeks, kind of going through the grieving of my father and also of my own physical health. And that was part of it, that third step is that there is an emotionality that goes with our stories. And to be honest about that, it does take us into that place of being vulnerable. And I realized when I was in that quiet space of letting it go, I thought, what's for me, I do the figure 8 movement. So I did last Friday when my hip seized up again. I went to go to a Pilates class and I said, I can't do that today. I'm just not up for it today. So I listened and we did movement instead. And movement can be crying. Movement can be actually sitting in silence and asking the flow of the divine to come through you. It doesn't really mean it has to be outward moving like dancing or walking, although that can be another form of movement. So that was really good realization for me to look at the whole picture. And then I had a couple of nights where I'm not the only one that has this happen. I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm wide awake and it's like 12:35 and I'm like, whoa, 12:35. This is a little early to get up. Still, I got up, I got out my Louise Hay's book and I started going through doing some of the exercises, and I probably stayed up an hour and a half. And I went back to that realization of the doctor that is within us, that it has these insights for us and is trying to bring this valuable information. So although the day before I had tried heat on my hip, it never got better all day. So when I went into this internal doctor, I got, wow, well, that's because it's nerve and it needs ice. So I iced my hip while I was sitting there doing this exercise at, 1 o'clock in the morning, and the ice worked. So there is that ability that we can get that something that we may not be conscious of because we're too busy trying to make something else work, that I came to the realization of when I was working on changing, how do I go from this story to the story that I want to bring into form. And I also realized that I had this story running about sleep. I don't sleep a lot of hours. I might sleep, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours. And that's a lot of sleep for me, 6 hours. And I realized unconsciously and subconsciously, my dad used to say, oh my gosh, you guys are so lazy. So then I have this story that if I sleep too much, I'm lazy. And I don't know if you have any of those where you had a hard charger in your life, but I know I certainly did. And I have, even though it seems on a conscious level, what a ridiculous story. If you're tired, rest. But I realized that even when I paint, that drive comes through me to complete the project. Oh my gosh, you got to complete it at whatever the cost, even the stiffness. So that was a great realization for me. And then on step 5, when I was breaking it down, is that I had to really trust that God's got my back, that if I need a rest, I need a rest, that God's got me and I don't have to work my fingers to the bone, whatever the old sayings were, or get out there and push through it. That's a limiting belief for me. My body doesn't operate that way. And that might have worked great for my dad and my brothers, but that doesn't work great for me. So I don't know what your gap is in your story, but instead I opened to what's the highest and the best in this. And for me, it was self-care. It was really clearly self-care and several different things. And then while I was reading that Louise Hayes, there was this section in the book about gratitude. Now I'm sure we all do our gratitudes. Thank you, God, for my home. Thank you for my health. Thank you when I wake up. However, I was realizing that after I'd read this beautiful excerpt before bed, when I did wake up at 6 o'clock the next morning, I look out and I have this beautiful view from my kitchen. I'm having my coffee, and I always look out and think, all right, God, show me where the property or the people that I'm to serve today, or, show me that. That morning when I got up, I realized I need to shift that story, that it's not go get them. It was, thank you, God, for this house, for this investment. Thank you for all the investments I had. So it was an area that I might have done it in the other areas, but I had clearly missed coming from that place of gratitude first. So that was what really woke me up. And Ernest Holmes, there was this quote that I found about gratitude, and I don't think I've ever heard it before. Gratitude is one of the chief graces of human existence. One of the chief graces of human existence. So I love that from Ernest. So my 6 steps, and I'm going to invite each of you as I close to think of your own stories, because today I actually lived it. So be careful what you ask for. I wanted to change my relationship story. Wow, did some things open up this morning for me, and I'm sure there'll be quite a bit. I'll be pulling out my own 6 steps today to go through it. So be mindful that when you do ask, you're opening to expanding to the highest and the best. But there is a letting go process that goes with that. So step 1 was that witness it, thank the story. So that's what I've been doing around the relationship. Break up with the story, like physically, mentally, emotionally. Hey, I'm done with this. To listening to that doctor within, knowing that maybe it is moving through to get the emotions going. Maybe it is trusting more that God does have your back, and letting go and releasing into that. And then that gratitude opens the door. And yesterday when I was listening to this podcast, Dan Sullivan, I want to close with this quote from him. And he works with entrepreneurs, and he says that the eyes only see and the ears only hear what the mind is looking for. And it's exactly that. So I started up, he has a phone app. So I want to close with this phone app. And if you feel guided to download this, it's free. It's called Win Streak, WINSTREAK. And what you do, it's a little different than gratitude. Not that it doesn't have an element of gratitude, but what it does is you list your 3 wins of the day, and then your 3 wins you'd like tomorrow. And then you visualize your 3 wins that you had today at the end of the day. And then you visualize your 3 wins for what you'd like to have the next day. Well, I've only done it one day, and I've already exceeded and realized that what I put out for yesterday, actually many threads of that have already come through today, and it's expanded even more to let go of a couple of other stories. So that's what I have for today around letting go of our story and looking at the gap in between. So thank you.